again, grateful for it. But it's been pretty fabulous. We've had some family in from out of town and just spent some time on a new trail in the redwoods called Grove of the Titans, which I have not been to before, but it had some pretty like world renowned, amazing, by volume, biggest trees in the whole world. So it's pretty outstanding. I'm always humbled in the redwoods, but these were like, holy cow, these are really, really big redwoods. So
where was that, Kelly?
it's called the Grove of the Titans. It's down in Jedediah Smith Park in California. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of our, you always take people there when they come visit. So,
Yeah.
it was fascinating, just gorgeous. A new trail too. Just really nice. Mm-hmm.
Great. Moret, how's everything in Central Oregon?
Sweat.
Yeah,
yeah. Sweat. I mean, we've just had day after day after day of rain, and right now we have sunny weather, so it's kind of nice. But grasses are growing like crazy, and the fire folks are worried that we're going to have a lot of grass when it dries out later this year, and that'll be dangerous for fire. So right now we have a lot of wildflowers though, so I've been enjoying those and getting out and hiking with friends, and so that's all been fun. It's very great year for flowers.
Yes, it has been. Out in the desert, it was amazing. This is like green, like it was a color you don't really associate with the desert. The sagebrush was green, everything was crazy green. Mauricio, what's happening?
Carl, oh man, since the last time, even though I had to abandon earlier meeting, but I was so glad that all of the things I got accomplished, and so I'm so grateful to all of you for doing that. It's been a wonderful few weeks. I spent not this weekend, but the past one with a number of BIPOC organizations meeting at Hack Lake, bringing a lot of underrepresented kids to learn how to fish. And that was wonderful. We camped out there, and we had like a good 400 kids from all walks of life trying it out for the first time in their families. So that was wonderful. And
wow, where was that, Mauricio?
Hack Lake. It's about, I'm gonna say 45 minutes or so away from Portland.
Wow, yeah. That must have been crazy good.
Yeah, and I am yet to catch a single fish. So there lies the irony, my friend. So. And and then I do throughout the week, I've been facilitating DEI sessions for folks overseas in the UK and Asia. And then on Friday, I was talking to the Latino Health Equity Conference, talking about the benefits of connecting with nature for the Latinx communities around town. So it's been a very heartful set of weeks, I'll say. I'm very, very pleased and very privileged to be here with all of you, as always.
Thanks, Mauricio. Man, you're doing some great work. It's just great to hear what you're up to. Srishti, what we've done from the beginning is every meeting we just try to catch up, since we have yet to really officially meet in public. It's just a good idea. So if you don't mind, just kind of tell us what you've been up to, a little bit about yourself and what's been happening.
Absolutely. And thanks so much, Carl. So for those of you not very familiar with me, my name is Srishti Kamal, and I'm with Defenders of Wildlife, as Carl mentioned. I am the senior representative for Defenders in Oregon, which is basically a fancy way of saying I'm the point person for Defenders in Oregon. And I'm based out of Portland, Oregon, but a lot of my work takes me all across the state. So I consider my job a privilege because I get to travel to some of the most beautiful parts of the country. I am originally from India. That's where I grew up. That's where I did a huge chunk of my initial education. And that's where I sort of developed my love for wildlife, because I grew up with tigers and rhinos and elephants and megafaunas like that. So, I knew I wanted to be in conservation before I knew the word conservation. And so that's where I kind of pursued my path. And I have a PhD in ecology, but my specialization is in human dimensions of wildlife conservation. So where people meet wildlife and understanding social and political values and how they influence wildlife. So that's kind of been my sort of career trajectory, if you will. I've been with Defenders for 4 years now, been following OCRF since its inception, advocated for it at the legislature, been a strong advocate for it since. And so I consider it, like Mauricio, a privilege to be a part of this group. And I really, really, truly value the Oregon Conservation Strategy and its implementation and making outdoors accessible to all. So those are kind of my own personal values and passions too. So it's great that it aligns so closely with OCRF, and I would love to be of value to everyone here.
Thank you, Sristi. Sristi's already done a lot of work with us. She's been a fantastic supporter for us all along, and it's been my pleasure to work with her, and I'm really looking forward to your stint on the committee. We're really fortunate to have you, so thank you. Kaylin, what's happening in the governor's office?
Good to be with everyone this afternoon. Trying to think of work that would connect most to this group. Probably the most rewarding thing that I've gotten to do recently was a couple weeks ago, visit communities and community leaders in many of the river corridors that were impacted by the 2020 wildfires, Santiam, North Umpqua, Mackenzie River area, where, you know, in addition to the core infrastructure, clean water, housing, those sorts of projects, folks are really coming together to think about river and trail access and rebuilding campgrounds and their local connection to nature. And one of the things that I've been trying to do in the background, have been doing for a while, is leveraging resources from FEMA and helping to provide funding and community assistance down to those folks to get the projects done on the ground that they care about. So I actually got to meet with folks that I've been working with on Zoom for 2 years and actually be out there and see some of these environments that were just absolutely verdantly bright green, as we've all been talking about with a nice wet spring that we've been having. So that was a real treat, and more work to come there, certainly. And then just personally, I'm looking forward to heading out to Northeast Oregon tomorrow for a State Parks Commission meeting and a little rafting trip down the Grand Ronde. So that's what's going on in my world. Yeah.
Oh man, that sounds like fun. Nice trip to the Grand Ronde. Well, that's great, Kaylin.
Yeah.
Mark Labhart, I thought you were going to be on vacation.
Good afternoon, Carl. I was. I blew in this morning, landed after a 12-hour flight from Paris about 10 o'clock this morning. So I thought I could make it, and sure enough, I did. Now, night's day and day is night for me right now. So, but it's been, my wife and I did a bucket list. But before I get to that, I just want to welcome Sristi. For those of you who don't know, there's a lot of people that got OCRF going, but Christy played a key role behind the scenes, working to get the legislation passed. And so she's always been there in the background. Now she's in the forefront. So glad to have you on board, Sristi. So back to Paris. My wife and I had a bucket list to spend a couple weeks in France. And so we wanted to be there for the June 6th, 78th anniversary of the landing of D-Day. And so we were actually at the American Cemetery on June 6th, and we were walking along some of the grave sites, and a gentleman came up to me and stopped me and stopped. He says, well, good morning, sir. How are you? And I said, well, I'm fine. I turned around, and it was General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he said, well, where are you from? And I said, well, we're from Oregon. And he was just the most gracious person. I don't know if he's in charge of all the nation's research. He gave me this. I don't know if I can show it to everybody or not, but it's his coin from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He presented. He just said, "I'd like you to have this. I'm only giving it to a few people today," and I was just absolutely overwhelmed. It says 20th Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, United States of America, support and defend, presented by General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So that probably made my whole 2 weeks in France, was having an opportunity to have the Joint Chiefs of Staff at that very somber 78th anniversary of the landing of D-Day. So, but we did a lot of other things in France too, but that was pretty impressive for me. So I'll never forget that, and neither will my wife. So that's but I'm back, and sisters, glad to see the sunshine, Moret, for me when I got in today. But I'd heard that the rodeo got quite a bit of rain, so that's too bad. So, end of report, Carl.
Well, Mark, that's exciting. That's what a gratifying trip that must have been. That's and the fact that you went to that and recognized the importance of that event. That's really cool. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing it. Okay, well, I think that is everyone. Mark Stern should be joining us hopefully a little bit later in the meeting. But now that we have Sristi, we actually have a quorum, which is a good thing. By the skin of our teeth, we made that. So that's great. So the next thing up is just review and approve meeting minutes. Charlotte, have you got that motion?
So I do not have a formal motion prepared for today, but I'm going to share my screen just so that everyone sees a copy of the meeting minutes, and hopefully you have had an opportunity to review them. So the motion, if someone on the committee would like to carry it, would be to approve the meeting minutes as written with continuing authority to adjust for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Is there someone that would like to carry that? And if I need to, I can pull up the exact language if you guys need that.
So can we get a motion on the minutes?
I'm happy to go. I move to, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I move to approve the minutes. On the date is the one on
For May
the letter
2nd.
for May 2nd, 2022, with the continued authority to correct spelling and grammar as suited.
Second. Nope.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Raise your hand. Great, we're good. That's approved. You got a good memory, Mauricio, remembering that entire motion. That was great. Okay, so that being done, we're going to move on to the Drought Communications Project that we funded previously and get an update and progress from Amanda Sola.
I might pause you very briefly, Carl. So with the permission of the chair, I do have to read out members of the public and other individuals on the call for the record for today before we move into the next agenda item. So today, members of the public that we have present or have had present on this call include Eleanor Gaines, Jim Greer, Ed Morzetsky, and Sarah Elizabeth Rose. We also have members of the ODFW staff, Sarah Reif, Amanda Sola, Roger Furman, and Megan Dugan. And with that, with the permission of the chair, I will introduce Amanda once again to provide a brief update. And this is in response to the ODFW special project request that was brought forth to this group at your last meeting on May 2nd and passed through the ODFW Commission. And Amanda and Roger are both here today to give us an update on their progress.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I appreciate the chance to give this brief update for you. I'm going to keep it brief in case there are questions. So first and foremost, contracting is done. All of the advertising buys have been placed. The creative is nearly done. We've got probably 95% of it done. We're waiting on a few pieces of display banners to return, and then a secondary digital advertisement that will run on OTT. Once those are returned, then all of the creative will be done. We've also pursued Univision advertising as a means of reaching a large portion of the Spanish-speaking population of Oregonians, and we're working with their creative services division to help us with translation and certainly with in-culture appropriate ads so that we're resonating and our introduction into that community is fruitful for all of us. And those are slated to launch the final week of June. We've also secured a web domain, and for your knowledge, it is droughtinfo.org. If you go to it right now, you will see a whole lot of nothing because it's not redirecting to anything. But it is owned and we have it. And that was where we'll be directing all of the communications towards. We also are in the process of finalizing all of the web resources for the page that will, once you go to droughtinfo.org, what that redirects to. And we're going to feature on there that drought map very prominently. As you guys perfectly laid the scene for me in talking about your travels around the state recently and how wet Oregon is, that's very much an important aspect that we've been taking into consideration with this campaign. As we outlined in the proposal originally, our strategy needed to be nimble to be able to adjust to changing conditions on the ground, especially weather. And that intentionality has also proved to be prudent, as Oregon has just experienced a historically wet April, May, and June, particularly in the northwest portion of the state. So as a result of that, we've decided to adjust the schedule and start towards the very end of this month. The 24th is the targeted go live date. And then the end date obviously has to be adjusted to compensate for that as well. Part of the reason for that rationale is that the Northwest and the I-5 corridor in particular is where a very large portion of the state's population and the target audience resides. And so delaying slightly makes the likelihood that the messages that we're going to be sending out are going to resonate at a much more personal level with them. And so that was the rationale for that change. But just as a quick recap so that you guys can keep tabs on it, the digital advertisements, so that's the search ads, display ads, geofencing, social media advertisements and tiles, radio and television ads, the targeted emails going to ODFW customers, the targeted email outreach to the outdoor rec and environmentally conscious Oregonians. All of that is planning on beginning this month. So we are right on target for everything that we had intended in the campaign. So with that, I will open this for questions, should there be any.
Amanda, I agree with your time frame and the change. And I think, as I indicated, you can get us lulled into a sense that everything's okay. And the reality on the ground is it's really not. And so that I'm sure you can incorporate. I'm happy to hear how flexible you are in crafting your message and all of that, given whatever the circumstances are, but that may be a really important thing a message to convey. While it looks like everything's great, in my experience in the Klamath Basin, and like I said, in Central Oregon, it's really not. So kind of a tough message to get across when you're soaked in rain.
Yeah, to further emphasize that, there is a disconnect also, certainly from Oregonians that are in the northwest of the state and those that are in central, or as you mentioned, like the Klamath Basin. The experience of what they see in their backyards is different, despite where they may choose to be recreating. So that's another reason why we want to make sure that we're very prominently facing that drought map, so that Oregonians, when they're landing on there, regardless of where they're living and seeking more information, it'll be very quickly clear to them the vast scale of drought and the severity of it throughout the state.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Amanda?
Will the creative assets be released prior to the launch of the campaign, or is this something that is just moving through as it comes from the agency?
That's a great question. So part of the work that we're doing is we've been reaching out with the rec agencies, the recreation agencies, I should say, and natural resource agencies. And we're working with them so that we can do that shared partner communication, making sure that we can weave in their messages to us and then also provide assets from this campaign to them to share out. So yes, those assets will be available. I'm not sure that as it's like me, but like ODFW is intending to release the OTT specific advertisements it would be probably pretty difficult for them to utilize those just because of the size of those files. But the social media tiles, the banner ads, copywriting specific to key messages, all of that will be able to be shared in a miniature toolkit, so to speak, so that any partner that wanted to utilize it, regardless of whether or not they happen to be a sister agency, we welcome them to the party to help us get this information as far and wide as possible and educate the public as much as we can about drought.
Thank you, Amanda. If at all possible, when that toolkit becomes available, I'd love to be included in that.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Mauricio, thank you for being willing to help on that. I've always felt that you would be a great asset to look at this particular program. So thank you. All right, anything else for Amanda? Okay, well, Amanda, thank you so much for giving us an update, and keep up the good work on that, and include Mauricio in everything you do. I have gotten now to recognize a string of crazy letters representing Mark Stern that I think he's called in on his cell phone.
Yeah, hi, Carl. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Great.
Sorry to be on my phone, but glad to be here.
Really glad you are here, Mark. You missed the introductions, and as you can see, Srishti Kamal is now an official member of the OCRF committee, and we're really pleased with that. And everyone gave a chance for an update. I'll give you an opportunity if you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life.
Well, Srishti, it's great to have you be part of the committee. So welcome, and look forward to you being part of this dialogue here. That's great. And this past week, Ginny and I had an opportunity to get out and go birding in Central Oregon quite a bit. And one of the fun moments was we tracked down a bird called a veery, which is not very common in Oregon. They're more in Northeast Oregon, but despite all the rain and the wet, we happened to find one perched out on a snag, singing away over the last few days. So that was kind of a highlight in terms of motivating us to go out on what was otherwise a pretty damp, wet weekend. So, but that was good.
Man, that's a good sighting.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Jenny got a pretty good picture of it singing too.
Okay, well, great. Well, Mark, I'm glad you're here with us. And according to the agenda, for public comment.
Yep, absolutely. So we still have a couple members of the public on. I would welcome you, if you would like to either raise your hand or just to turn on your video and let us know if you have anything that you would like to share with the committee this afternoon. All right, hearing none, I do always welcome any additional comments if you'd like to provide them in the chat, and we can, if there's time allowing at the end of the meeting, provide another very brief opportunity if someone else signs on with the permission of the chair.
Great.
All right. So with that, our next agenda item will be the special project request discussion. I may suggest that Carl, as the chair, if you would like to tee that discussion up, and then I do have a couple of prepared slides that once you kind of give an overview, I'm happy to walk us through the process and the discussion points for today.
Okay, God, Kelly's doing a disappearing and reappearing act there. That was pretty cool.
I'm so sorry. My husband and I are both here today, and he's like on the phone, off the phone. I'm like closing doors. It's like, apologize.
When you walked away, you just disappeared into that beautiful scenery and then appeared magically. Okay, so this is really an exciting thing. We really have two major reasons why we went ahead and had this shortened session. And one, of course, was to introduce Christy and get her on board and put her to work. The other was an opportunity that arose thanks to Jane Hartline. some of you who were on the committee recall that Jane in the past funded some projects that we had with a funding mechanism that she has established. I wish she was here to explain exactly what it is, but it's a foundation and funds it as part of a self-directed trust. And she's able to spend that in any way that she sees fit. And of course, that's conservation oriented. And she has really done some incredible things with that funding. But she was taken by some of our projects that did not get funded that she thought were really worthwhile. And much of the reason they weren't funded is just because we ran out of money. They're very good projects. And she approached us and said that she would like to fund a select portfolio of projects from the ones that did not get funded in the last round. And we looked at that. We then, as you know, we have a special project subcommittee that we set up specifically for this. And we convened that subcommittee and went over the projects that she wanted to consider. And also we elected to go ahead and honor the match that we have had of a 30% match for private funds that are directed to the OCRF with a certain intention, as long as it is within our mandate and we vet it and find it to be acceptable. So with that, we did convene that meeting, and maybe Mark can run us through the thoughts. Mark and Maurette were there, and Mauricio had reviewed all of the projects and had given his proxy. So Mark, you want to talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I'll give it a try, and others can add in. Is Maurette on the call today or no?
She is.
Okay, great. Well, maybe I'll lead off and Maurette can follow in. But we had an opportunity to go back and look at the 4 different projects that Jane was interested in moving forward, and kind of went back through. We read the ODF&W staff reviews for each of those projects, and we also shared what various insights we had as to how committee members had scored or ranked those projects. I believe we felt the projects had merit. Some were sort of at the higher part of our list on the not yet funded categories. Some were a little bit lower. And then we also had an opportunity to visit with Charlotte, and on a couple of the projects that we were interested in, also had the opportunity to point out some of the things that ODF&W staff and the committee members thought could improve those projects. And I believe as we adjourned that meeting, Charlotte was going back to work with the staff and the applicants to see if some of those projects could be slightly refined to make them stronger projects than what they were when we initially reviewed them. So I think that was kind of the running narrative. I guess I defer to ask Maurette to chime in after that, or.
Yeah, I think you captured most of it, Mark. I think we had questions because some of the projects were rated higher by ODF&W staff, and particularly the technical reviews. We were trying to pay a lot of attention to those. And so we had questions that we wanted a bit of follow-up on. And then we also were torturing ourselves a little bit on just process and was it fair for us to try to improve these projects? And we decided that it was. I mean, we all counsel on various projects all the time, and we're trying to get these projects to be stronger and meet the Oregon conservation strategy in a more complete way, and be stronger with partner work and more leverage. And so we thought these were good projects, and we recommended that they come to you for a further deeper look.
Thank you, Maurette. I got to say, I once again was just really, really proud of this committee. I mean, they take it really seriously and they look very hard at all these issues. They want to be fair. They want to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And I was really happy with the scrutiny that they gave it. And in fact, Charlotte, I think, can give us a little bit of a report on her communications that she had with the applying groups and entities. She really did a lot to try to make these better and in more compliance with the wishes of the staff. And so Charlotte, you want to kind of run through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And with your permission, I might take us a little bit of a step back and just make sure that everyone's aware of the process that we did follow for this. And I think, Carl, you mentioned this quite a bit. These special projects did follow the exact same path we have used for all of the other special projects that have come forward for us. These projects were brought of interest by the donor, which was Jane this time. They were championed particularly by Carl and Jane together, who worked, because that is one of the important steps for our special projects, is that these are brought forward by an OCRF advisory member. And then as you mentioned, they had gone forward to the special projects group for discussion. Following that, I really did work quite a bit with all of the 4 applicants that you can see on the screen, and really to help fill in some of the questions and the gaps that we had about this project, about their specific project. This is a very parallel path that we have done with every project that has gone forward to the special projects subcommittee. I am not aware of a single one that hasn't had a back and forth with that subcommittee prior to it coming to the full OCRF advisory board. So that is very in line with what this group has done. So as you can see, there's 4 projects that are put forward. All of these projects had small things adjusted to them in light of the BFW staff reviews and or the OCRF's special projects subgroup. These were very minor, particularly just readdressing timeline of their work was one thing that was universally across the board. Most of these groups did have to adjust slightly their timelines to be in accordance with the release of the potential funding. Also, there was quite a bit of clarification on scope of work, what was going to be done, additional information. And it is to mostly to staff's recommendations that we were able to address almost all of the questions that we had in relation to these projects. In the ODF or the ODFW staff have been consulted on these, in addition to the OCRF advisory committee has received supplemental information for almost all of these projects, either in written form by email or in oral form. So with that, I might pause and I'll just highlight at the end that the really nice and unique thing about the selected projects here is that they do actually complement the main suite of 23 projects that the OCRF Advisory Committee has already put forward, particularly with increased diversity of ecoregions, program priorities, and also project classification. So I will pause and pass it to the chair, Carl, and see if Commissioner Lockhart would like to ask a question.
Yeah, sure, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondered about match, Carl. Did any of these have any additional match that doesn't show on this chart?
If I may, Carl, may
Sure.
I add in there? So yes, Commissioner Lockhart, these projects all had varying degrees of match. And first of all, almost all of these projects did not ask for their total amount of the project itself. And that's information that I'm more than happy to pull back up and to provide to the OD or the OCRF committee. They all brought either in-kind match of staff time and or monetary match along with their projects in varying degrees. Just as a reminder, the OCRF does not require match. So that was in addition to the private donation by Jane Hartline and her family foundation. And then really the question here is if OCRF wants to move forward with our 30% additional match to what Jane wants to put forward for them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
No, I was on a couple of these projects. I think they're good projects. That's awfully nice of Jane to want to put forward a few more. So that's great. I was
Yeah,
glad to
yeah.
hear the check-in with ODFW happened, because there was a few too that had some more questions as well about how they're connecting with ODFW on data and protocols. So that's good to hear. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Charlotte said the tweaks were minor, but not in all cases, like the Beaver Handbook project. ODF&W has a very strong interest in what gets put out in that. And we, as part of the process, we have the caveat that there will be very close consultation with staff for ODF&W and how this handbook is put together and what the content, because apparently the current handbook that is being revised recommends doing a bunch of illegal stuff. So they're gonna revise that and make it a little more in tune to what's right. So we did. I think the great thing about this is not only are we funding these projects, but I think in each one, they're a better project than they were before Jane stepped in and not only funded it, but helped us make them a better outcome. So again, I wish Jane was here. I believe she is like out in the desert looking at plants in that new Trout Creek acquisition. But it's really incredible what she has done. And I personally really appreciate it.
Hey, Carl, I had one other thought to share as part of this, if I may.
Sure.
I think it's also important that we're continuing the matching component in OCRF. In other words, that OCRF is going to provide a 30% match to the private dollars that are being contributed to these projects. It's not actually technically required sort of or needed as much in this particular biennium, but in the bienniums going forward in the budget request that ODF&W is in the process of developing, I think it does have sort of what's the right word? The opportunity to provide a private match that OCRF helps raise, like Jane's match, will help us secure state funding and help support it. And I think part of the budget request was the idea that we would continue this practice of raising private money as Jane has contributed. So I think even though it might not have been absolutely necessary in this moment, I think it's a really good opportunity to continue to demonstrate how and when and where and how we can bring additional private dollars to OCRF. So for me, that was another important part of the benefit of this project going forward.
Thank you, Mark. I have to totally agree with what Mark said. And even Jane, who's on the committee and wanted to do this, she has other places she could spend that money. There's a lot of need for what she has. One of the factors that convinced her to do this is the match. Her money now is going further than it would have otherwise. And that was the reason, I think, when they first envisioned this match for the OCRF, that was part of the thought. And as we move forward, we tried to use that match as an incentive for donors to move forward and put funding in the areas that we have as priorities. So I think just the fact that she went with that and match was part of her decision, that it was the right move for us to continue it. And also I'll reiterate what Mark said. When I went back to the legislature and was talking to them about future funding, it was powerful to say, yeah, oh yeah, we raised $500,000 during COVID. And that's a powerful thing. So again, I agree with what Mark had to say. Any other thoughts or comments on this slate of projects? So the task before us then is to approve this. If the committee, again, we're trying to follow all of the rules that we set up for ourselves and making sure that this is a transparent and an appropriate process. And so we have gone through the Special Projects Committee and is now coming before you for consideration. And also one of the reasons we went ahead and scheduled this meeting in the time that we did is because at the end of the week, Charlotte is going to be presenting our other slate of projects to the commission, and these will be included as a separate piece. And so that way, this money will get out the door and on the ground as quick as possible, and we'll get it all done this month. So that was the thank you all for coming to this a little bit off our usual scheduled time to make this happen. So with that, is there any other discussion about this? And if not, can someone make a motion?
I would move that the committee recommends expenditure of $97,500 from the OCRF main account, $75,000 from restricted donation, and $22,500 from general fund to fund 4 projects selected from the 2021-2022 OCRF RFP cycle.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? It looks like Mark.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
We have unanimous approval, so Charlotte can carry that to the commission, and that's just great. I mean, what a great outcome that all of y'all read these proposals and like, oh man, I wish we could fund that, and we're able to do that. So I just think it's great. We all should reach out to Jane and thank her for her incredibly generous donation. Okay, so we're moving right along here.
So with that, Carl, if I can interject very briefly, just on a procedural standpoint. So as you did mention, the next step is I will be amending the OCRF exhibit package for this coming ODFW commission. That new material will be hopefully internally approved within the next hour and a bit, and then sent out to the ODFW commissioners for their additional review. And that information will be made public on our website, on the ODFW Commission website as well. So just so that everyone knows that that material is going to be amended onto our pre-existing commission packet, hopefully by close of business today to get that out.
Great. Let me say, Charlotte really put in a ton of work on this and really worked to make sure that things were moving forward in the appropriate way. And she reached out and talked to all of these applicants, and she really made this happen. So we really appreciate Charlotte getting that done in a timely way.
And all of the considerations and different, how do I say this, amendments to the pre-existing scope of work that were originally proposed within their proposals, that specific language and those additional asks will be reflected within their contracts if approved by ODFW. Therefore, that we will be able to make sure that there is a carry through not only through our verbal conversations, this group and also the ODFW Commission's approvals will be contingent on them addressing those concerns as outlined through their Appendix A of their ODF contract if signed. So just so that everyone is aware, there will be a follow through to make sure that that is addressed.
All right, well, great. All right, with that, Charlotte, we're getting close to wrapping up. Did you want to talk about a few things? Give everybody an update maybe on our meeting schedule and.
Yep. Since I have you all on for a little bit, I am gonna, as Carl mentioned, give just a very brief update of where we're at with meeting schedule and what to expect moving forward. So as you've seen with the barrage of emails, I am still trying to find a good time to actually get you all together in person. That is becoming an ever more growing dilemma, I would say is a nice way of putting that. So kind of what I'm imagining right now is that we are going to have our normal July meeting, obviously not July 4th, meeting is scheduled for July 11th. Then I am planning on trying to get you guys together for a special work session specifically on funding and planning around kind of drought and different water related kind of funding issues. That is going to be virtual. And that's going to be, I am still honing in on the date, but that will be one of the end of August, beginning of September dates that we put forward in one of our planning scheduling kind of doodle polls. That's going to be about 3 hours, and that's going to be a virtual workshop with ODFW, in addition to hopefully OWEB and Water Resource Board, to give just presentations about what is everybody doing together and how can we coordinate. That'll be probably about a 2-hour session there, once again, remote. Then I'm hoping to actually get you all together the end of September and beginning of October. So do look out for one more scheduling invite from me to try to push in a in-person meeting along those lines. I will be nailing down the kind of drought water planning concept. I'm still trying to get that in people's calendars by the end of this week. That's kind of where we're at with some scheduling. There's still a lot of moving parts. One thing to also highlight to this group is that we do have an upcoming RFP that is slated to be released the end of July, beginning of August. So that is something for us to consider and make sure that we are prepared for, and that we kind of think about, are there any sort of lessons learned or continuation of refinement that we would want to do for this upcoming RFP.
I'm glad Charlotte brought that up. Our process is getting refined as we go. I think there's some ways we can improve the whole thing. Not the least being we have another person to review, so we won't have quite so many. Yeah, Kelly's happy about that. But just the process, like how we engaged with staff, I think everyone found that to be really helpful. And we want to try to streamline that and make sure that's working well. So yeah, you guys be thinking about that. If you're thinking of ways that, maybe we could do this a little better, how can we make it easier for you? Get with Charlotte about any ideas that you might have so that we can keep making this a pleasant and a productive process. It's getting better every time we do it. But again, I think we got room to improve as we keep moving forward.
I'll say though, Carl, that I think first, I want to commend all of us and how this process has worked. The ability to be flexible, the ability to be responsive and adaptive to both the needs, but also the opportunities that arise for us to continue to fund these wonderful projects. This is a universe that not a lot of organizations have access to through other means. And I think having continued to be that alternative, that choice that it still exists out there for these organizations that sometimes just don't have the capacity to go through a much more complicated and elaborate process. I think it's so important that we're in this sphere, and I'm very much proud to be a part of this group and this vehicle for those folks.
Mauricio, thank you for bringing that up. And in part, we have to make sure we don't lose our way on that, and we need you to kind of keep reminding us. In fact, that's what we've kind of been hoping this in person. We need to talk about things like that. Like, we really started that process of engaging with those groups, but I think there is more to do in that regard. And that's why really sitting down and trying to strategize and look where we maybe could have done things better or how we can go down that road. I appreciate your thoughts on that. And you and Mark Stern did a ton of work on that particular piece, reaching out to groups and getting us connected with them, but we've got to keep that going. So thank you and Mark for that. And Moret as well. Moret also reached out and got us connected with some great groups that aren't necessarily traditionally funded through this kind of mechanism. And we want to definitely keep that moving.
So Carl, if I may, I might just actually add in one thing along those lines. And I have had a comment for a request for public comment for the last couple minutes of the meeting. But in order to kind of help streamline the application process, it is my goal this summer to do some recorded webinars. And we'll see if this is actually media that's helpful, kind of walking through our application, better explaining kind of what are we hoping to get in some of these sections. And also see if there is any sort of interest or kind of value added of trying to go to specific locations and doing one-on-one listening sessions in the best that I could. Just so that there's an actual warm body in a chair to talk through an application and to discuss that. I know that's stuff that the OCRF committee on your own do a wonderful job doing, but there might be some geographic areas that I can kind of step in and help. So that's kind of one of the things that I want to do. And I'm hoping the recorded kind of webinar and short snippets of how-tos might help as well. But there is an interest in trying to do that, in addition to thinking about if there's a better way than Google Forms. I know that is very easy for some people, but it's very cumbersome on the back end. So I think moving forward, we might need to think of maybe a sweet spot of how to do that a little bit better. And that will be a topic I tee up for the July meeting. Mainly because it doesn't allow people to edit. I do have to put that caveat in. If an applicant submits it, it is next to impossible unless I delete their application to let them go back into it, because it's the ways we have it set up at this time. So it's a little weird. But I think with that, Carl, I might pass the meeting back to you for any closing thoughts, but I do have a comment from Jim Greer who would like to make a public comment at the end, if you so allow, Carl.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Does anybody else have any closing thoughts? Anything they'd like to add to what we said? Kaylin?
It was just a note perhaps for another topic at a later meeting. I had shared both with you, Carl, I think you'd gotten it from somewhere else, and Charlotte, information about the America the Beautiful Challenge grant program through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. At this point, that committee may not even be looking for additional funds to spend on a short timeline or federal funds to go after where additional approvals are needed. But speaking frankly, it's a very exciting program to me with about $85 million in it this year. It's not going to be the last year this program exists. And states, territories, and tribes are the eligible applicants. And the priorities, to my mind, match right up with OCRF. And so I know that you were exploring that, and I just wanted to bring that up for the full committee's awareness that that program is out there. And I know that it's, you know, under consideration by the agency and both of you to think about how that might sort of connect in with our work here in the future. So that was it. I'll drop a link to that program in the chat right now.
Hey, I agree. Charlotte and I have been looking at that. One of the possibilities is even the OCRF can act as a vehicle for an applicant that gives them the state connection. And so we are definitely looking at Mark Labhart.
Yeah, just on that same vein with Kayla and the Renewable for America's Wildlife Act, it looks like it's going to have a vote here within the next few days or next few weeks, as I understand, and that's a significant amount of potential funding that's going to come to ODF&W to implement the conservation strategy. So stay tuned, watch for that. Hopefully it'll pass pretty soon. It'll be pretty exciting for ODF&W and for conservation.
Wow, that's really great. Great stuff. Yeah. Okay, so Charlotte, I think that's it. If you want to have Jim comment.
So I might actually just pipe in one quick statement along the lines of the America the Beautiful grant program. So ODFW is actively putting in several projects with project partners. And our Habitat Administrator, Sarah Reif, has graciously offered to provide an update at our next meeting if you would like to do that. And also, just so that everyone is aware, Carl, you did send one applicant towards my direction that was interested in maybe using the OCRF as a vehicle to put in their application. And I have worked with that individual, and they actually decided to hold off and go for the next round. So we have actually already looked into the ability of the OCRF to be that leverage point. And as mentioned, there is a couple more of these coming out. So there will definitely be, I think, great opportunity for ODFW and our partners in OCRF to think about what is the logical way for us to partner together. And I think maybe a presentation from Andrea Hudson, who is our Habitat Conservation Coordinator right now, or Sarah Reif would be a really good tee up for that ongoing coordination.
Charlotte, I agree. I think that should be elevated to an agenda item so everyone is aware of the opportunity, and maybe we can put our heads together and come up with a great way to go after it. So.
Great. And maybe with that, with your permission, Carl, I'd like to give the floor to Jim for just a couple minutes before I will pass it back to Carl to wrap up the meeting right at 3 o'clock. So.
Great. Jim?
Yes, first question is, can you hear me okay?
Yep, yep.
That's a lot better than the last time I tried to give you any comments. Good job on this last meeting. Those projects, I think, really deserve that funding. I just had a suggestion in the light of transparency. I was kind of hoping to see some new projects based on the agenda. And I didn't realize that was a review of the 4 projects that you'd already reviewed, and that it was going to be a decision-making program for those today. So if you can include a little bit more information on those agenda items, I think that'd be real helpful. It may or may not attract a few more folks to the meetings, because I know it's hard to get a lot of public comment through this Zoom venue. So that's just a suggestion, and keep on going, doing the good work you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. We really appreciate your participation and your so loyally and faithfully being there for us. So we really appreciate that and notice it. So we take what you have to say very seriously. So Charlotte, I think you got that lined out for you. Okay, so once again, I have to say I'm thrilled to see Sristi's face here on the screen, and we're really excited to work with you. And I think, Charlotte, correct me if I'm wrong, we're having our intention is to have that July meeting as scheduled.
Well, not as scheduled because that's July 4th, but it is on your schedule for the following Monday.
Okay, great. Okay,
I don't think we want to meet on a holiday.
Glad we clarified that. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I think we can say we're adjourned, and we really appreciate you coming in and getting this work done. Thank you all very much. See ya.
Thank you.